Let's get to Phil Kline, former Attorney General, Kansas. Boy, Phil has been doing yeoman's work. Phil, thank you for being with us today.
Great to be with you, John.
Phil, I've never seen, I've been on the air 10 years, Phil Kline. I've never seen anything like I've seen in Georgia in the past 3 weeks. The number of people that are so upset by the fact that they think their vote was stolen, the election was stolen, they've been marginalized, and they're silent no more. Phil, can you take us through this fraud and what specifically your organization has and is working on?
Sure. What we revealed this week, John, is that we have identified in these urban cores a flow of $400 million of private funds to dictate how the elections will be run, that radically changed procedures that opened the door for fraud. Now, with that, what we released this week is a truck driver who carried over 250,000 ballots already filled out with the return addresses in the envelopes ready to be counted that were loaded on his truck in Bethpage, New York, and taken into Pennsylvania, where he unhooked his trailer and the whole thing disappeared. Over 250,000 ballots. Now, that raises serious concerns. Either 250,000 Pennsylvanians were vacationing in New York and decided to vote on the same day, or these ballots were fraudulently completed. At the same time, we released a whistleblower who said, look, I was one of the subcontractors for the post office, and I went up on November 4th, and what they told us is that I had forgotten ballots back at my facility, which is false. That was a lie. I double-checked, there were no ballots, and the post office said, we're rounding up hundreds of thousands of ballots today on November 4th to be considered. And then we have a whistleblower in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, that is there at about 4 a.m. in the morning that sees suddenly this dump of ballots. They're in the same plastic bulk mail trays arranged in the very same fashion as the ballots that were on the trailer that disappeared on October 21st. Now, there's only one way to get to the bottom of this, and that's to grab and seize the ballots. And there is ample evidence to call into question the legitimacy of this election. You know, this is the first election in U.S. history in which America was kicked out of the counting room. We couldn't see behind the boarded-up windows. We couldn't see what was happening in these huge centers where, for the first time, they consolidated counting, which we think justified the infusion of tens of thousands of ballots at one location. Mm-hmm. There was a billionaire on the inside of the counting room. Now, clearly, that should not stand. We can't privatize our elections. But, John, I appreciate your voice. It is amazing how the media will not even ask a question after this evidence is brought forth. We corroborated the truck driver's evidence with people inside the facility who said this happened multiple times, where ballots moved from Bethpage, New York, to other parts of the country. It's stunning that in America we will not take the time to look into this.
Well, they don't want to look into it because they're afraid of the truth, because they know it happened, and so they look the other way and just talk about President-elect Biden and his make-believe cabinet, Phil. Outrage of people is what is driving this, and it's only going to get bigger, and they all want it to go away. They just want to get Biden in there, and they all go away, and all the Trump deplorables go away, and we can get back to making deals with China and taking money from Goldman Sachs and shipping our jobs out. That's the goal here, Phil, at the end of the day. That's why there's no questions being asked.
Yeah.
Now,
we have a corporate oligarchy in America.
Phil, that's exactly it. That's their comfort zone, a corporate oligarchy where, you know, a handful of big corporations, Amazon, Walmart, Carlyle, run everything. And, you know, Goldman Sachs calls you up and tells you what to do. That's the way it was under Romney, McCain, George Bush 1, George Bush 2, the whole bunch of them. People are done with it now. I mean, I'm seeing it, Phil, on the ground. This movement has taken my breath away. I don't know what to make of it. It's so large, Phil.
Yes, well, I hope so. Because I'll tell you what they're doing is they're giving us bread and circuses while they are running this country, not in this country's interest, and not respecting the individual liberties that are part of our Bill of Rights. not respecting you building your hopes and dreams, but in the interest of profits in a worldwide market. And with that, they have influenced enough of our government that they are allowed to censor information, which is one way to choke off a healthy democracy. They are allowed now to determine how we pick our nation's leaders, and that's the other way that you gain control of a nation. It is stunning to me how this has evolved so quickly in 2020. But the breadcrumbs or the problems associated with how we got here, it's been happening now for about 35 to 40 years. And it is time to stand up because we are losing precious freedoms. We have seen, John, as you have seen, I've seen governors say, no, I'm no longer a part of the lawmaking process. I am the law. And then we pass these wide sweeping provisions that control every aspect of your life and human relationship, every aspect of it, under fear, by the way. And fear is what creates these tyrannies. You take a fear, you throw it in the air, you magnify it, and you get people to turn away their freedoms for a false sense of security. And so they sit there and they pass these provisions. They don't pass them. They pronounce them. And then the only people who these laws get enforced against are those who challenge the authority. It's not about safety. It's not about science.
Right.
Look who's being arrested. It's people who challenge the authority of the government. And that tells you what it's all about. It's about power. It's about power. And I want to encourage those crowds. I want to encourage the people who are taking the stand because we've got a lot of people sleeping in America still. And the next day they wake up, they might not be able to exercise their precious freedom of speech. They might not be able to speak. I had this from a Wall Street Journal reporter, and it just stunned me.
Right.
Phil, criticizing how the election was run undermines democracy. My goodness, democracy lives on healthy criticism.
Unbelievable.
That's the lifeblood of it. And to say, don't criticize the government because it might undermine the government. I've seen a lot of that type of pablum in North Korea, in China, in those nations that don't tolerate criticism.
Phil, you're on the front lines of this. Phil Kline with us, former Attorney General of Kansas. I've got to get back to this truck from Bethpage, this whistleblower who said he drove a truck from Bethpage, New York to Philadelphia.
His trailer disappeared full of 250,000 ballots in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Where did the ballots come from?
Well, that's what we're investigating right now.
Unbelievable. I mean, they just showed. Well, how did they? Why were they in New York?
John, this is fascinating. You're asking me questions that a journalist or an investigator should ask, and I've got to tell you, there's not one person in the mainstream media who even asked that question.
Unbelievable.
They actually said, "Where's the proof? Where's the proof?"
I know, right? They said, show us evidence. Well, the evidence is we got an affidavit of a guy saying he drove 250,000 ballots from Bethpage, New York, into Philadelphia, dropped off his trailer. It was gone. I mean, what more evidence do you need? Oh, my God, Phil. It's maddening, Phil. It's maddening. Let me get.
The trailer has GPS. Post office has cameras. You can corroborate a story.
In 5 seconds. In 5 seconds, you can corroborate this. They won't do it because they want it to go away, Phil. It's not going away. It's not going away till we get to the bottom of it. All right, I got to get some of our callers involved. Phil Kline with us, former AG in Kansas. And, Phil, what is your organization now again?
Well, it's the Amistad Project of the Thomas More Society, and we encourage people to support it. GOT-freedom.org.
All right, Armistead Project.
Freedom.org. Yeah.
Okay, let's get stay on the line. We're going to merge them in. Let's get to Phil in Virginia Beach. Hey, I'm sorry, Rich in Virginia Beach. Rich, you're live. John and Phil.
Hey, John, it's amazing that a current Democratic politician, Vernon Jones, is fighting harder for Donald Trump and a fair election than the Republicans in the state of Georgia.
Wow. I mean, think about that, right? You've got Linwood, a Democrat, and you got Vernon, who got skewered yesterday by Breitbart, by the way, in a hit piece from McConnell's office that is absolutely despicable. They're fighting harder than the governor, than the Secretary of State, right? Fighting harder than a Jeff Duncan, Cosmo man with his $5,000 Armani suit. Unbelievable, Rich. Thank you. All right, let's get to Marie in Miami. Marie, you're live with John and Phil Kline.
Hi. Listen, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yes, the November 3rd election and how they vote in Georgia is flawed, but think of this, gentlemen. If we lose the Senate, then we'll never have a Republican president again, and then our voting system will really be screwed up. We won't have any choice because they're going to add 2 states. They're going to make it the popular vote, get rid of the Electoral College. I really think we have to look at the big picture. I know that Kemp, etc., and the 2 candidates aren't doing what they should, okay? But listen, we have to win the Senate, and we have to have our priorities, and I'm concerned. I know, Mr. Fredericks, you were concerned about it, and I'm sure Mr. Kline is too.
Well, Marie, thank you for your call. And yes, we're concerned. If we lose these 2 seats, the Republic is gone as we know it before I get to Phil to respond. But here's what Georgia voters are saying, okay? And you can't sit and dictate anymore what people do. They're done with that. Here's what Georgia voters have been saying to me for the 3 weeks since I've been here. You fix this. You stand with us and fix this, or we're out. I mean, that's what they're saying. So we can sit there and say, oh, that's a bad decision. Doesn't matter. You've got to listen to the Georgia deplorable voters. And in order to inspire them to get out on January 5th, you got to take action. That's why we're having the hearing today. Because the question I ask is, okay, what has to happen for you to get fired up about this runoff? And every answer I get is the same. We want a special session. We want the governor to fight. We want the facts out. We want something. We're getting nothing. So the hell with you. They're just going to steal it again, and they already mailed out 1 million absentee ballots again. So, Marie, that's the problem. We all understand the tremendous sense of urgency to win these 2 Senate seats in Georgia. But right now, if they don't do something, what callers and voters are telling me in these rallies and over the phone is the hell with you. We're done. That's reality. You have to just follow the truth here. All right, let's get Phil Kline involved. Phil, what's going on here in Georgia? What Marie said is you lose these 2 Senate seats, there's no Republic, it's gone. Everybody, I think, understands the stakes. But a lot of voters in Georgia are very upset that they're not getting a voice, they're not getting a hearing, they're not getting a special session. Their vote was stolen. Then they're going to steal it again if you don't stop it. How do you react to that, Phil Kline?
Well, I would say, first of all, we're getting ready to file another suit in Georgia to try to prevent what's happened in the general from happening in the special election. And I would just add this as an observation. I think you're seeing a political realignment of the parties. And what you have is you kind of have an institutional party that supports the way things have been done over the last half century, where the interests of the American people are not reflected in the conduct of government. And then you're seeing some people with a principled approach, both within the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. It's taken the form of kind of a populism, and you're starting to see bridges built between those 2 groups across this divide of self-interested government. And what's bringing them together are things like free speech. You know, there are people on the left who are deeply concerned about the mobocracy that we created in the past year in America. They're deeply concerned about a lawless election. And so you see some historic shifting going on within the Republican Party. Now, President Trump was anti-institutionalist. That's why you see some of the Republicans who've been there for 30 or 40 years attacking the president, or at least sidestepping supporting the president. They're interested in their own advancement, and they're not looking at what is right and true and that's right in front of them. And unfortunately, they have been linked to another group that wants to protect institutions and elevate corporate power and diminish individual liberty. And those are the cancel culture. That's the folks who do identity politics. Your right is dependent upon what group you're a member of. That's how we can call, for example, speech violent and violence speech, because if you're a member of the right group, you have the right to be violent to express yourself. If you're a member of the wrong group, you don't have the right to speak to express yourself. That's what's happening in America right now. And us pleading with people to stay within the guardrails of what we've defined as republicanism and what is defined as a Democrat is not going to work, because those organizations have not acted consistent with the principles that they've expressed.
You nailed it. Right.
I understand what she's saying, and I believe it's important to maintain the Senate, and we're going to, for the Republicans to maintain the Senate if they want to express power. But that's what's happening right now.
Phil, very good. I mean, you're one of the. That's why we love having you on. You're one of the few people now in the trenches like me that understand the depth of this movement and why people are so upset. Let me read a couple of texts here, and then we got to take off. And thank you, Marie. Thank you for the call. And your concern, Marie, is spot on. Everybody should. If we lose these two seats, there is no republic. So you're spot on. But let me just read you a couple of texts here. The first one from Paul in Mechanicsville. He says, Virginia, if you're going to count the votes the same way again, why friggin' vote Georgians? That's what they're saying. Barry in Weirs Cave, Virginia says, Phil has nailed it completely. So, Phil, you got a fan there. Thomas in Virginia Beach. Phil is right. That is a contributing reason to Taylor's loss. That's Scott Taylor in Virginia Beach. Too many did not trust that he truly supported Trump based on his 2 years in Congress, and people are just done with that. And it goes on and on and on. Hank in Richmond, Virginia says, thank you, Mr. Kline, for fighting for America and our Constitution. Frankly, I'm very disappointed that we can't get this lawsuit done faster. And then finally, Den Black says, John, ask Phil, what happened to the trailer that disappeared? It had GPS. What happened to it? Phil, can you answer that?
We're looking for it, and those who have the power of the GPS of the trailer are not telling us.
Unbelievable. Thank you, Phil Kline, man, for all you do, buddy.